All right, so we're back with another episode of the Ain't Done Yet podcast. Click like and subscribe. You're watching. Check this podcast out. We have some great guests today. We've got one of the coolest dudes we know, one of my best friends, Mr. Benjamin Ralphs, Las Vegas, Nevada, president of Scotty's Car Wash.
Thank you, Ryan, for the fabulous introduction.
Yes, man. Thanks for being here, dude.
Thank you, man. Thanks for the invite. I appreciate it.
You know, it's funny how we got reconnected. You know, we were in the fraternity together in college and Sin City CrossFit. And, you know, we've always known each other. But you, sir, have a podcast as well.
I do.
That you started.
I do. I have a podcast.
I was a guest on it. I'm like, man, I haven't seen Ben Ralphs in a long time. And we did that podcast and you got to learn. You asked a lot of amazing questions, got a great background on my brother and I, our band, our history. And then, dude, that ignited such a great friendship between us because of that podcast. So thank you to the Learn Machines podcast, dude.
You're welcome, man.
Yeah, man.
Yeah.
That's cool, dude.
How long have you had the podcast?
You know, I'll say I've had that podcast for a little over a year now.
Okay.
You know? And it's been pretty easy to get guests, but it's been a struggle trying to get them out, which is always, you know, it's part of the deal, you know, especially when you're funding it yourself and, you know what I mean? You're trying to look for free stuff all the way, you know, all the way to skill sets for free to use to put your episodes out. But I've had it for about a year and a half. It's been an enlightening and wonderful experience for me because I love to sit down and talk to people personally, you know, it's really interesting. You go there and you talk to someone for an hour in an intimate setting and you really get to know someone in that just short amount of time. And podcasts are very wonderful in that way.
Yeah. It was like, man, we were talking about it for a long time. We would just sit and chat in John's office. And I was like, dude, we gotta film this stuff, man.
Yeah, man. We'd have so many conversations and we're like, this is kind of interesting. Oh, that's kind of interesting. Oh, we're talking about business here. Oh, we're talking about life here. Oh, we're talking about enter in subject that's kind of cool to talk about here. That
nuggets, man.
You know,
Nuggets
and we're helping each other out. It's like, oh, well, we're helping each other out with all these conversations. We could be also helping other people too.
Yep,
that's right.
Yeah.
I thought back of why I wanted to start my podcast, and I enjoy talking to people. But I really feel like I had the benefit of living next door to my grandparents growing up, and I would always at the end of the night just kind of go to their house, like, you know, almost every night. And I would sit there and I remember sitting up there late nights with my grandfather. He would drink coffee and I would be on his sofa and we'd just sit there and talk while the news was on. And he would just tell me all the stories about his life growing up. And I really enjoyed those moments in and old timers like that are just very good at telling stories.
Yeah, they are.
And so I was so intrigued and curious about, you know, all the things that happened in his life. And that really, I think, sparked the initial part of me just storytelling and listening to other people's stories. And I feel like that's kind of where it started with me.
Okay.
My podcast journey.
Nice.
Yeah.
Well, you don't just do your own podcast. You also are a entrepreneur and businessman, I would say, right?
Trying to be, right? Trying to be.
You're doing it, man.
Well, how did you get started? Tell me, what did you go to school for? What did did you go to college? Did you go through all that stuff or?
Yeah, I did. I went through that whole process there. And, you know, I wasn't born and raised in Las Vegas, but I'm as close as you can be to being born and raised in Las Vegas. I moved here when I was about, 3 or 4 years old.
Okay.
So I went from pre-K to college here. Okay. So this is home for me. Went to El Dorado High School. That wasn't a very, let's just say a very safe school to attend.
Yeah.
On the east side of Las Vegas there. So that was
were you the only white guy on the basketball team?
I wasn't the only white guy, but I was a minority. Let's just say that.
Right,
so,
right.
But so I went to El Dorado, and then I got done with high school, and I immediately didn't go right to college. I spent about a year and a half working, and TJ is one of my good friends, and his father owned a granite business here in town, and so I didn't end up going to college right away. I worked for him for about a year, but I think in that scenario, I realized, they would always like, hey, let's go to the bar. It's Friday night. They wanted to go to the bar and hang out. And there's nothing wrong with that, but I was much more ambitious at that moment in my life. And I just didn't want to, not that they're bad people. I didn't want my life to end up like that, where my Fridays and Saturday nights were just based on going to the bar.
To drink away the week, right?
To drink away the week. And like, I wanted to wake up like Monday wanting to do something for the week, and I noticed that about myself right away. And I think after doing that for a year, it was hard work doing Granite.
Listen, I was in construction too, and I can tell you that is the exact same story, man. I had the exact same story. I'm in construction, and that's what everybody did. It was Friday night. It wasn't even just Friday nights though. It was every night, right? It was every night. You get off work, you got to go to the bar and have drinks, and it's like, my grandfather was an alcoholic on my dad's side, and my dad always told me about that, and it wasn't something that I wanted to do. My dad never drank. My dad was always home at 5 o'clock at night. Dinner was always on the table, blah, blah, blah. And I watched these other guys. I'm like, I went out a couple of times because they're nice guys and they're great guys and everything. But, I thought the same thing. I'm like, is this what I'm going to do my whole life? I don't want to do this. I want to work somewhere where I enjoy working, and I want to build something. I don't know what that something was at the time, but I wanted to build something, No,
absolutely. That feeling is real. And that feeling led me, I think, all the way to, what little success I've attained now to this moment where I like being ambitious. I like wanting to be successful, and
what'd you go to school for?
So I left there. I left the Granite company, and I remember walking in there and I was like, hey, I'm going to go to college. And I remember he looked at me, he said, what for?
Mm-hmm.
And I didn't have an answer to like what for,
Yeah.
I just knew just not this.
Mm-hmm.
And so I left, and then I didn't know how to go to college. I didn't know how I was going to pay for it. I didn't know how to fill out the FAFSA. I didn't know how to do any of that shit. So I just figured it out, man. And just went and filled it out my own and answered the questions the best I could. And then asked people, hey, what does this mean? How do I get this Pell Grant? Do I have to pay this back? And you're figuring out as you go. And then eventually it went through, and I got funding to go to college, and I just went, and I didn't know what I wanted to be. And I just started taking classes, and I was like, oh, I started taking science classes because I like science, and I just started doing that. And then I was like, oh, there's some really pretty smart people in here. This is getting really hard. But again, I just stuck with it, and I learned that, taking a history class and getting an A in that is different than getting a freaking, an A in physics. It's just, it's tough. And, but I got through it, and I got through it. And like, I think a lot of kids in my position did, which is you just walked into the unknown, not knowing what to do, and you'll figure it out as you go. And that's kind of what I did. So I ended up getting I got a Bachelor of Science in Environmental Studies and a minor in Solar Renewable Energies. And then I got done with that, graduated.
You said
solar renewable. Solar renewable energies.
Okay.
Yep. And if you ask me why I did that, I couldn't tell you. I just, I think at the time I had enough credits, but I enjoyed those classes. I enjoyed like studying the history of Earth and geology and all those things, and
you got a really interesting job with one of our other boys. Right?
So I left that, and I got done, and then one of my buddies, Sean St. Mary, had a job, a biologist job, to go out and you do these surveys for tortoise,
Okay.
and for any of the other thing that could be flora fauna that's either threatened or endangered, or in some level there that you have to mark on what they call the biological opinion of an environmental assessment.
Okay.
So you spend like
that's cool. How long did you do that for?
I did that for about 2 years, man.
Oh,
about
wow.
2 years, yeah. And it's fun. You go out there and all these federally funded construction projects out in the middle of nowhere, and you spend like 5 weeks in the classroom learning how to identify all the different flora and fauna in an area, and then you learn how to use like GPS devices and stuff like that. Because at the end of it, you get done and you show up somewhere at like 4:30 in the morning in the middle of nowhere, and you left the house at like, dude, you leave the house like sometimes at 3 o'clock in the morning to get to the middle of nowhere at like 4:30 before the sun comes up. And you get there, you got your backpack on and your GPS, and you get there, it's dark. You're in the middle of nowhere in a desert. He's like, all right.
Yourself?
you and another biologist.
Okay.
But the biologist meets you and he's like, okay, we'll come back here in 4 hours. And you just do this grid pattern. You just walk out in the middle of nowhere by yourself. And you do all the survey work needs to be done. But I've never seen so many snakes ever. And they're out there, but you'd be walking out there, you would see, dude. I mean, one time I saw at least 7 or 8 snakes.
Really?
Yeah, rattlesnakes just coiled up on a rock trying to, I think it's thermoregulating.
Yeah,
they try to get warm.
Yeah.
And they don't do anything, but yeah.
Yeah, they pull the heat out of the rocks, huh?
Yeah.
Yeah, you'd be surprised, man. We went on a hike yesterday morning. We would check out some petroglyphs.
Okay.
Man, Ben was like, it was like a tour guide, dude. Talking about volcanic, emulsion and all this, I do crazy stuff.
Wow.
Like, this is great.
But just keep down the hike. Don't
pay
tell
for
people what I
this.
said. No,
I'm gonna take him on vacation with you, man.
No, I'm not that good. No.
This is an ecological hotspot.
So what did you figure out about the tortoise is? Is it tortoise or is it
Tortai?
Yeah.
tortai?
A lot of people, I got some people who are real close to me that always kind of joke around me and call it stuffed turtles and like turtles. And I just always say, dude, it's a tortoise. And it's a difference is the turtle lives in water and the tortoise lives on like land.
Oh,
Yeah.
That's
okay.
the key difference. They
right.
they don't, that's their ecosystem. And so I always try to correct people when they say that. Just now it's just banter. It's just fun to do it. But
Right.
yeah. So I did that. That was, I think I have a very broad background in things like that,
Mhm.
from biologist to now doing what I do now. But yeah, it was good. And then I got done with that, did that 2 years. And then I said, I want to go back to school again. So I went
Mhm.
back to school and at the time, I think I was working in an environment that had a lot to do with the government because we enforced a biological opinion of that environmental assessment. And so I was like, I'm going to do something bigger. So I was like, I want to go work in government and do something along these lines,
Okay.
And I went and got my master's degree in public administration, it's MPA. That's
Mhm.
that's more for the public sector as opposed to getting your MBA for the private sector kind of
Right.
deal. And I learned a lot in those classes. I got done and I was a graduate research assistant at UNLV for those 2 years and got a little stipend. And I signed up for everything I could sign up for to do all sorts of different variety of projects at UNLV, which was really good because I got to meet a lot of people.
Mhm.
And I got to meet a guy named Jeremy Aguero who runs applied analysis. And we helped build a data lab at UNLV.
Okay.
It's called the Urban Data Center. And it was a classroom for faculty and for graduate students to go in there and run data through and collaboration. And so you could be a graduate student with faculty and they could help you with your graduate studies and, whatever papers you're trying to get out and stuff like that. And I met Jeremy and I got done doing that. And then I was like, let me try to be more of a noble human. Right.
Mhm.
So I did AmeriCorps for a year after that.
Oh wow, where'd
Yeah.
you go?
So I was supposed to go to California, I believe. And it was so funny, man. I was supposed to go to California and I can't remember exactly what it was for. I knew it was, the reason I say that is because that's what I signed up for. And about a week later, I get a paper back and saying, that program was like shut down. They didn't get the funding for it.
No.
So now you're going to do this new thing and you're going to show up at the YMCA every day. And I'm like, what?
Here locally?
Here locally.
Okay.
And so they, I think at the end of the day, is put some I don't want to say it's bullshit, but they put this thing together where my job was to figure out how many people were volunteering on public lands.
Mhm.
So and then really what that led is me just going out to every nonprofit group there was in Vegas. I had to deal with like the public sector on public lands. Like they would just deal with volunteer work because that's where they would get all the volunteers to do stuff with. And so I think they were trying to figure out how many, I'm spending this much money on this program, how many people are coming out there to volunteer. I think that's what they're trying to do. So
I see.
I did that. That was a year long, didn't pay well at all. And I
What
halfway
did they
through
want to know? What did they want to know that information for?
I honestly couldn't tell you. I can only speculate.
Mhm.
And
Do you think it was worthy? Like, because what I'm getting at is like, how right now, like Trump is slashing all this shit.
I was thinking the same
Right?
thing. Yeah.
And it's just like, why is he slashing the shit? Is the shit legitimate? Is it not legitimate?
Yeah.
Is there, and not to say that it's legitimate or not, but do we need to be spending the money on those particular projects.
So
right?
I'll maybe phrase it differently, because there's one way perspective looked at is like federal funding coming to a state to, you know, count volunteers, you know, but I also think that was really what it wasn't about. I think it was more about, because when that was happening, I started getting this influx of different nonprofits.
Mm-hmm.
And so I think what those nonprofits want to do was to show this is how many volunteers our nonprofit is giving to the public sector for this work. So, and I think they're kind of fighting, like, hey, I have this many volunteers doing it. So next time I go I want to go for funding, I can say that I'm the number one, you know, nonprofit that provides the most volunteers on an area, so I can get the funding.
Right.
And as opposed to the federal government really looking at it and saying how many volunteers are out in public lands picking up trash or something.
Mm-hmm.
I think it was more of a case to help nonprofits and their funding, trying to get funding for their projects, something like that, you know. But to your point, I mean, does it help? I don't know. You could say that no one's doing that work and it has to be volunteers, so maybe it does help. If they didn't do it, would.
But if they didn't know the count, would the work still happen? Kind of
Right? Is right.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's why I think I phrased the beginning was kind of bullshit a little bit, but
yeah.
But
so you did that for a year.
I did that for a year, man. And I got done, broke as shit. And I was like, God, this is not working. I can't be living on $800 a month.
Thinking back at the granite place, right? Where
I was like, this turned out well for me now.
Right?
Of course. Yeah. Here I am with a master's degree and I'm getting paid $800 a month, which is less than I was making at the granite place, you know? And I got done and then I called Jeremy and he's like, yeah, come over. And I came over, did an interview with him and everything, and it was great. And so I worked there. I worked at Applied Analysis for about 3 years.
Okay.
Yeah. Maybe a little longer than that, something like that. And then from there, I've got a funny story about how I ended up in commercial real estate.
Yeah, how did you become?
Yeah.
How did you become the director of finance at Odyssey Real Estate Capital?
So there's 2 parts to that. One is my friend TJ ended up opening a CrossFit gym.
Sin City CrossFit. That's where me and my brother got started.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, when we talk about our CrossFit days before we signed to True Love Never Dies.
Yeah.
TJ, our fraternity brother, was the owner.
Okay.
So we started going to CrossFit there, and we attribute so much of our like the savageness to our stage show and how we would play was because we were training at Sin City CrossFit. All of us were training there.
Okay.
So
and so you were.
So he had just opened the gym in 2000. He was the second CrossFit gym to open in Las Vegas.
Yeah.
I believe this was like 2008, 2009.
Yep.
Okay.
And so he was like, hey, just come to I was going to 24 Hour Fitness or something at the time. And he's like, come to my gym doing this CrossFit thing. And I'm like, what is that? And then like you go there and it's like all of a sudden you start climbing on ropes and doing, you know,
throwing around
wall balls and like rowing and stuff. And it was cool. And so
cool.
I did that for a long time with him. And so he ended up opening like 3 more gyms after that. It was pretty successful. And so the last gym that he opened, I was going to, and partly to be fair, I had a free membership. It was my best friend, so he
took care of us too.
Yeah, it was.
We were broke band guys. We were not paying him. We could not pay, dude.
There was a financial incentive to go there, right?
Right.
But it was awesome, and so I was there, and you know it's expensive. It's $150, $180, $200 a month, you know, depending. So you get a certain, like I want to say, type of people, a certain class of people as well that go there, you know.
Mm-hmm.
And especially you had the one near Anthem, and so you there's a different type of folk that would go to those classes, and a lot of those folks would be successful, you know, and in whatever business they were doing or working, whatever job they had. But make a long story short, I ran into someone that's very important to me in my life, Greg, and I got to know him at CrossFit. We sit there and we just kind of got to know each other, just showing up the same class together and talking and stuff like that. And
what year was this?
Oh man, I want to say when we first met, I want to say it was like into 2015, something like 2016, maybe.
Okay.
Something like that. And it might have been a little bit before 2014, but it was in that 14, 15 area of 16. So, and I would show up every day, and then we talked and we got to know each other a little bit. And he asked me what I did, and I told him, you know, I worked at Applied Analysis, and you know, I do data analysis for them. And he knew what it was because a lot of the information they use, they put in a thing called prospectus, and so that goes out to everyone once a year, sometimes twice, but I think it's once a year. And it will have all the, have the commercial real estate rates. It will have vacancy,
the analytics,
all the analytics. Right?
I was just looking at a bunch of them.
Yeah. So we put that out.
Yep.
And so, and it has a lot of commercial real estate stuff in it too. So that's, so Greg knows everybody. So he knew where I worked and what it was. And not that it's a glamorous job or anything like that, but, and so we talked, and one day I'm at work, and I get a text from him, and he goes, "Hey, you want to go to lunch?" And I'm like, "Yeah." Like, when do you want to go? And he was like, "Now." And I'm like, "Now?" I was like, "What?" He's like, "I'm out front." So I'm like, okay. So I go out front, and we go to lunch, and we just talk. He just talk about my life and my background and that kind of stuff. And I asked him some questions, and it's Greg. So he's just a chameleon in how he answers questions and, stuff like that. He's always just listening more than he's talking, Yeah. And then we leave, and about a week later, he does the same thing to me again, and we go to lunch again, more questions and stuff like that. And he does that, I want to say 2 or 3 more times. And then, one Saturday we're at the gym, we're doing a 9 a.m. class, and I get, he's like, "Hey, I got to run an errand." And I was like, "You want to come with me?" And I was like, "All right, yeah, I'll go with you." So I get in his car, and we drive down to this medical office building. It's on right across the street from the Whole Foods in Henderson. Across the freeway, there's a big medical office building there. And I get out of the car, and we walk in, and I'm like, "Oh, why are we walking? What kind of errand is this?" Yeah. Like, who are we going to? You got a doctor's appointment right now? Am I going with you to the doctor? And so, we walk into the medical office building, and he just starts going tenant to tenant, door to door. And he walks in, and he goes to the front, and they're like, "Oh, Greg, hey." And they're shaking his hand, and then the surgeon comes out and talks to him. He's like, "How was the humidity levels in my surgical room are not up to stand." And Greg's just talking to him. And we go in the next room, we go upstairs, and we're walking around this building, and I'm still not grasping what is happening. I'm like, how did he know all these people,
Right.
And so, and then we walk out, and Greg's picking up trash and throwing it in the trash can, and he's talking about the ceiling tiles in there and in the flooring, and we're going to these empty suites that are in there, and then we get in the car, and I get in the car, and I'm just like, what in the hell is happening?
Like, does he work here?
Yeah, I was like, what is it? I thought he was going. I was like, yeah. I was like, I really thought he had a doctor's appointment or something. And so then we leave, and I'm, we go back, and he drops me off in my car, and then about a week later, he comes over to my work again and says, "You want to go to lunch again?"
So, and you still hadn't asked him, like, what the fuck were we
I thought he was just wanting to be my friend.
Right. Yeah.
I was like, oh, hey, Greg's a really awesome guy, and
right.
And so I still I don't think I was curious enough at the time to see, or maybe aware enough to see what was happening, transpiring in front of me. I just, all of a sudden, because this happened over a course of like 6 weeks. And, prior to any of that happening, was really interesting at that point in my life is I had applied for an economic development specialist at the city of North Las Vegas. And I had made it, and anyone knows about those government jobs, is that you apply, and you're applying with, 150 people for these jobs. And it kind of, you go through this process, and it dwindles down to the kind of the last few people. And then you get to a panel. And I remember that was a really good experience. I walked in there, and there's 6 or 7 people with their name badges in front of them, and they kind of pep you with questions, and I was like, I was getting close, and I was really excited about getting this job. And I was like, I'm going to work here, and I'm going to, retire my last 3 years of my pay. That's how it does in those government jobs. And that was going to be my story,
Yeah.
And I ended up not getting it. This woman beat me out. She was for sure probably better than me at the time. And I was really bummed about it. And then this thing with Greg started happening literally within weeks after that. And so after the medical office stint, he comes to me, does the same thing about showing up at applied analysis, and we go to lunch, and he says, "Hey, got a position open at my company, and I want you to work there, And I'm like, oh, okay. I've never actually quit a job before. I've been so straight laced in my life when it comes to stuff like that. I've never been fired. I've never, and I've never like went to someone's office and quit, and I was more terrified of walking into Jeremy's office and telling him I'm going to quit. Because Jeremy's a very, he's a tough cookie, you know.
Did you see at that point? Did you see the benefits that the job would have, or did you just say, "Hey, it just sounds like a good opportunity"?
Great question, and neither of those things came to my mind, John.
Okay,
I just looked at it as I do. Like I kind of a lot in life is, I like, man, this is I just took the chance, and that can get you in trouble, but I just, I looked back and, Greg was like, okay, I'm going to give you, you work, here's your salary. And, there'll be some equity in the deal for you on deals. I'm like, at the time, I don't know, equity. What is equity in the deal? What does that mean?
Right.
We're going to be equal? What are we, what is that? I had no idea what that meant,
Yeah.
But what I did know is I could tell the difference between good people and bad people.
Mm-hmm.
And what I respected about Greg the most is we walked in that building and he was super excited about talking to the tenants and showing me the building and talking about the work of the building, the commercial real estate aspect of it. And he never once said to me, "You're going to make a lot of money.
Mm-hmm.
You see this house I have, or you see the house that he has, you can get that house, or you can get a super nice car." Mm-hmm. He never said nothing about money or success or anything, Greg was driving a Toyota FJ, right?
Mm-hmm.
And that resonated with me so much because, like, man, especially looking back on it now, that's just who he is. And I know that now, but at the end, that's the only I had to go on was, what kind of human being are
Mm-hmm.
you, And that was one of the reasons why I just quit my job and went to work for Greg.
Was there any point where Greg said, "Yeah, we own this building"?
Yeah. Yeah. There was a moment where that I think I asked that question. I was like, "Hey, that building you took me to?" I think I was a few weeks working with Greg. This is after I actually started working with him. He was like, "Yeah, we own it." And I was like, "Mother, why didn't you tell me that, dude?"
Right.
So much cooler.
Yeah. But that was part of his stick. That was part of who he is. And he's been a really important person in my life. I can't, you have your parents who are always going to be number one in your life. You love your parents. There always will be, you do anything for them. And there's the other people in your life, your friends and, your brothers and stuff like that. But he's up there, man. And he's been a tremendous human being in my life. My own personal growth, letting me fail,
Mm-hmm.
Showing me my blind spots and stuff like that. I mean, I could go on and on about Greg, but that has been I feel privileged to know him. So,
yeah, Greg is. In the last year after we did our podcast, he said, "I want you to come in and meet Greg." And I went to the Odyssey office, sat down, and I thought it was like a typical, "Oh, well, this is our nonprofit, and this is what it costs to do this, and this is what it costs to do that." And Greg had such a cool way of saying it was like, well, you're asking for this like little, you want some funding for a Guitar Magic booklet. Okay. Well, let's think bigger without saying, let's think bigger.
Yeah.
He said, "I'm about it. You're close with Ben. We want to help."
Mm-hmm.
And the great thing about Greg was that, he actually helped. And he stuck by his word. I'll say two of the most humble and successful guys I've ever met in my life is Greg and John.
Yeah.
And that's like, it's the coolest. It's so awesome and refreshing when you get to be around people like that.
Yeah. It is.
So that's really cool, man. And then now you've worked your way up, right? I mean, how long have you been working with them now?
I've been in Odyssey almost, I might be coming up on 9 years. I'm going to say almost 9 years now.
Wow.
Yeah. Coming up on 9 years.
So what did you start doing when you were there, and then kind of just fumble into what you're doing now there?
Yeah. So
before we get into the other cool shit too, right?
Yeah. So you're kind of onboarding at that moment, and Odyssey has an interesting culture there. And I think Greg's made it that way from his years where he's worked at very high level corporate jobs in New York City and things like that. And I think he wanted to create an ambiance, a culture that he would want to show up to work every day with. And I think that was his modus operandi of how he wanted his people to, not, I wouldn't say to be, but how he wants his operation to be ran,
Mm-hmm.
So my onboarding process it's almost at Odyssey. I hate to say it's like trial by fire. I don't know how to, at the time, I mean, you go back to college, I say, yeah, I took economics, I took business 101. I took these, but when you get a set of financial statements in front of you and you're looking at P&L and the balance sheet and you're like, okay, well, what is liabilities? Why is that really high? And why is my revenue low? That's not good. It's hard for you to look at financial statements like that. And, but I was trial by fire, man. And
what were you hired for initially? Like he said,
I was the director.
Job is going to be blah, blah, blah.
My job was the director of finance. It's what I started with and where I'm currently still at,
Okay.
And I'll say, and it's different for everyone, but titles don't mean much to me in a way.
Titles shouldn't.
Yeah.
Titles shouldn't mean anything.
Yeah.
But it does give an understanding, I think, from the outside world to understand what it is that you're dealing with.
That's right. So, I first started, when I first started there, I had some people there helping me as much as I'll say wanted to help me. But I started understanding that, hey, there's some property management stuff going on. We third-party property management a few properties. That means that we don't own the properties. We'll provide the property management services for those properties.
Things go down, things break, blah, blah, blah. You guys are going in to fix them.
Yep.
Right.
And so we have property managers there, and that wasn't my job, but my job was to, at the time, was once the financials for the month were completed, they would be sent to me, and then I would draft the email and send them out to the owners of the properties.
Okay.
So that was
is that the CAM fees?
That was all. Yeah, everything. Okay. Everything would be in those, and so that was my job. Very easy, and then the rest of my job was sitting in the conference room. The rest of my job was going to meetings with Greg and his partner at the time, and being on phone calls, and that was where the real learning process started to happen. Because Greg knew I didn't know jack shit about commercial real estate.
Yeah,
but he knew that just being at his hip all the time, I'll learn I'll learn what, and it was one of those things too. You're not trying to unlearn something that was bad habits before. Let me give you, for lack of a better word, all the good habits while you're learning how to do something novel.
Yeah, well, I think one of the things that Greg likely recognized, and we had a discussion here about it with some of our operations people here, is that the most important thing about an employee is the dedication of that employee to the company, right? And I think he probably noticed that in you, and that is everything else can be learned.
That's right.
Right.
Yeah.
But that dedication, that wanting to help, that ability to come in at all hours, you get a phone call at 11 o'clock at night and say, hey, Ben, I need you. Can you help? And you're like, yeah, let me get dressed. I'll be there in 10 minutes.
That's right.
There's not a lot of people that are like that. And that's what I believe he recognized in you.
And I think you're 100% right. And I think that's just part of that is my personality, part is that your upbringing, all those things,
For sure.
They can be learned, but some of that is like just that it factor that you have that you want,
Yeah.
And I think Greg recognized that. He recognized that I would just be a Swiss Army knife of whatever he wanted me to do. If I had to just drive people to the airport, I would do that. If he wanted me to learn something and get something done, I would just stay as long, all hours of the night to make sure it was done at the best possible way I could do it,
Right.
Yeah. And I was just, to your point, I was just willing to be dedicated and appreciate that I had a job and I had this opportunity, and I just want to be the best version of me I could. And the rest of it, I knew I could learn it, and I knew I would stumble my way through it, and hopefully I could avoid all the big mistakes and make small mistakes. But I knew if I answered the phone every day and I showed up every day and I stayed late every day, and I showed the dedication that I could be successful doing this, because it's not rocket science.
Right.
It's not commercial real estate and isn't, you're not slamming particles together,
Right. Yeah. You're not in open heart surgery, right?
Yeah. I'm not saving lives here,
Yeah.
But yeah, that's, and that a lot of that stuff, and I don't want to talk too much about myself, I don't want to do that, but those are the things that I think that came from my parents. I was never allowed to not have a job. I had to be doing something.
Yeah.
You weren't going to school, you had to be working,
Yeah. It's exactly how my father was too. My father was in the military, 20 years in the military, and is like, living here without a job. And I mean, I was out at 16 and, I came back for a little bit of time. I think when I was 19 years old, but my dad was like all about like respect your elders, all of those kind of things that, I think lead people to be good people. And I think that's probably part of the big problem with society today is that that's not happening anymore. Everybody believes that they're owed something rather than fighting for it to deserve it. It's just crazy. I was talking to a headhunter the other day for a specific position at Structure, and she was telling me she was 35 years old. And she's all, but everybody in that like 18 to 28 range wants to get paid what a 20-year veteran at the company already gets paid. And they want to work from home too. She's all, that's what they all want.
Yeah,
and
office
if you're
hours.
not
I have to come
offering
into the
that,
office?
then they're not taking it. Right. Yeah. You have to physically be at the office. Wow. That's weird. Right. It's and for us, that's super important for us to be here as a team, talk as a team, go back and forth as a team. Things change quickly and rapidly. And, phone calls and video calls and stuff like that, they don't work because we need to be hands-on. The things need to be tangible, right? We need to be able to sort through them and just, I need to be able to walk into somebody's office and point at their screen real quick and say, no, not like this, like that, or vice versa, them with me.
Yeah.
And those things are so important to, keep the job process flowing, at the speed it needs to. Because it's funny. We were going through, we had a new hire out in our Chicago office, and she was emailing back to this office here, and we're crazy busy here, right? So people aren't in their offices all the time, right? So and she's copying me in because she's new, and it's kind of watching this like pong ball bounce back and forth, and it's happening like every 6 hours. Here's a question, here's an answer. 6 hours later, and then there's another question, and then another 6 hours later, and it's like 3 days. And the client that that Mary's asking all the questions for, the client is waiting 3 days to get all these answers when all of those answers could have been answered in 5 minutes with a phone call, right? Or just doing it herself. And so I'm like, hey, did you learn how to get in our project management system? Do you know how to go in and look at that rental inventory and just see how much it is? Yeah. Then you could just throw the client the price or float the client the price and say, hey, it's approximately this, and then you can get further feedback quickly, right? And we could get all the same stuff all done in one day instead of 3 days, right? And I think that's what the at-home mentality is. The at-home mentality is like, we can get this done, but it's going to take 3 to 5 days. When if they're in the office, it could happen in 30 minutes. Right. And that's the big discrepancy in this idea or concept that everybody can just work from home. Yeah. No, I agree. And I feel like this, and maybe it's the industry I'm in or, but I feel like you're not as productive at the house as you would be in a working 100%. Office environment. There's a lot to be said about coming to work and with your colleagues and having the hive mind to get things completed. And you just, being in these solo chambers, it's difficult to do that, and it's even harder to do it sometimes on Zoom or or Teams. It's like you can't.
Well, it's like a Viking ship, right? And when you're here and everybody's here, everybody's like row. Oh, we need to adjust the sails. I'll grab the sails, right? Adjust. We're all working as a team to move forward. That's when you're all separated and everybody's doing their own thing, you do, and you get off track, and it's hard for me to do the same. And I consider myself a pretty highly motivated person, but sometimes I do get off on that because I'll be like, oh, that's right, I needed to do that inside the house real quick. Like I've been meaning to do that, and now that I'm here, I could go take care of that real quick. And that take care of that real quick is 45 minutes later. And I'm like, oh yeah. And then I'm up till 11 o'clock at night because I've been kind of in between everything that I'm doing when I could have gotten all that work done in a matter of 3 to 4 hours, turns into 11 hours.
That's right.
You know?
I think you guys would still be up at 1 a.m. anyways. So.
Well, you know what? You're starting to be that way too. Now you're trying to keep me on my toes with the text messages. Why ain't you doing this? And why ain't you doing that?
I see it. Ryan's texting me at like 7 a.m. now.
Yeah,
I'm like, what is happening?
What? Rockstar 7 a.m. He must have gotten in an accident.
Yeah. Ben was like, man, dude, I love that you're up early right now. John's the same way, dude. I'm like, dude, what are you doing? Have you gone to sleep yet? I'm like, no, dude, I woke up this early, man. You gotta
you were just getting home from partying. You must have been at the pepper mill.
Yeah, man. No. So how long into working with Greg and getting into commercial real estate where you're like, oh, okay, I'm down with this?
Yeah, like kind of starting to figure it out a little bit.
Yeah, you know? and just like, all right, you weren't like as nervous, and you kind of found your momentum and your confidence to go forward in the industry.
Yeah, I very unsure at the beginning, but that feeling led me to be hungry and led me to do anything I could to survive. You know, not that it was a life or death situation, but it was. I wanted to. I wasn't definitely going to lose this battle because I wasn't working hard enough. There's just no fucking way. That's not who I am. That's not how I'm built. I'm just not built that way, you know?
Yeah.
But a part of me figuring it out, I think, was two parts. One is when I finally start to understand, it's like, oh, we're hunting for our food. Like, oh, I'm not just every 2 weeks I collect a paycheck. Like, this comes from somewhere. And like there's that recognition because you have these jobs, you know, in your life, especially coming from where I come from. I came from a kind of a middle class family. You know, I was lucky my parents didn't get divorced, and my dad was, you know, I have side jobs I got to do to make my life work. And so you're going to get out with me. You're going to lay block walls at 5 a.m. for 3 hours on Saturday. And I was like, yeah, but I got cartoons I got to watch.
Yeah.
What are we doing?
I got friends.
Yeah. So that part of that is, you know, maybe helped all in the forging my own steel, you know, in life. But when I started to recognize we're hunting our own food, I think I started to get that this is how money is made. You know, you've got to, we're out there finding projects. We're out there, you know, you're looking at 100 deals to execute on 1 or 2 because most of them are, you know, are shit. And so, but that recognition, I think, was me finally starting to get it. And then me starting to just do pattern recognition. Like, oh, I've done this before. We've modeled this. I see what happens next here. And the pattern recognition and then understanding how this whole wheel works was sort of a light bulb for me to say, oh, me building my own confidence that, oh, I can do this, or I can be as successful as I can possibly be in doing this. You know, I still have faults of my own. I still, you know, will have my own personal failures and things like that. But I think it took me, to be honest with you, it probably took me, 3 years to start to see how this thing works and really get comfortable in doing it. I wasn't, even at 3 years in, I wasn't comfortable. Don't hand me a project to do on my own. I could do it, but I wouldn't be efficient at it.
Were you invested at that point, or were you still kind of like, you know, is this for me? Am I going to be?
You know, I think I was invested because I like coming to work every day. That was really important to me. I like showing up every day. I like the way that it was so novel to me. It was so novel to me to watch, you know, phone calls being made and coming into a whole different side of the world that was unexposed to me at the time. You know, you're living when I was living at the time, I was living on the east side of Las Vegas, you know, and it's hard to see success manifest itself in ways because you know, your next door neighbor does the same job as your parents do, you know, and that kind of stuff. I got lucky because my parents didn't get divorced, so they stayed together. So, you know, I never had issues with food in the house, but I also knew that when it was time to go school shopping, I could get one pair of nice shoes. I knew I could only get like, you know, 2 or 3 shirts, but I knew it never dawned on me that it was a bad thing. I just knew what I could ask for. I was doing the math in my head, you know.
Right.
Oh, Mom, I want these Jordans, you know, but I get these Jordans at $99, and that gives me, you know, another $150. I could go buy 2 pairs of, shirts and this, you know.
Yeah.
Right.
So you know that
you were already budgeting out spreadsheets then, dude.
Yeah, but yeah, man. I think all that kind of leads to, you know, the person who you are today and that kind of stuff, but it
So
took me about 3 years to figure it out.
Mhm.
Yeah.
So you're 8 years in now. It took about 3 years to start getting comfortable. And how long now? And I'm excited to talk about it a bit. It's opened up now. I want to get to it. Scotty's Car Wash,
Yeah.
right? A badass car wash in Henderson. But that's the thing is like I came in, we started hanging out very close in the last year or so, and it was like ready to go. But how many years was it before? I just saw, the grand's opening. Hopefully it's happening next month. I saw the very tail end of it. So, it's like, quick. But now I can only imagine that it wasn't that fast. Like how many years was there? Like get us in the story. So you're starting to see these deals. You're going through hundreds of deals. And now is there are you seeing like a gap in the marketplace? What made you kind of push to get a car wash going in Las Vegas?
I think it's a lot like in life. Things kind of boil down to things that are just more simple than that. You don't really get the inside of niches and markets. That's tough, man. It's hard unless you're just, the market very well, but it kind of, it boils down to, we were looking for things to cash flow as opposed to spending all this upfront money and to sell something, and you hold period for these things are, 3 years, 2.5, 3 years, and then you would sell it and you're the last guy to get paid, which is great. And, but you're not cash flowing, right?
Mm-hmm.
You get to fee it along the way, but that's minimal and only at times. But like I said, you look at 100 projects to execute on 2.
Would you call that? Would you call a car wash passive income, or would you call it an operations based income?
It's funny right now in my head. It's straight operations based.
Okay.
I haven't got to the good passive income part yet.
Okay.
And that's the hope, right? That's the hope of maybe any operational business that you want to get to where they giving you mailbox money, right?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And and it's as anything in life, it's never as easy as it seems, right?
Yeah.
And but to your
anything that's worth anything, you have to work for it.
You have to blood, sweat, and tears, baby.
Why would it be worth anything if nobody had to work for it? If nobody had to work for anything, then there wouldn't be a worth to it, right?
Yeah.
I mean, there's this weird thing that's inside life, right? And it's like, the best, most valuable thing is usually one of the best looking things, right? It's like, if you're going to buy a high-end suitcase, for instance, versus the one that's at Kmart, the one that's at Kmart, it may hold up. It may hold up just as long as the more expensive suitcase, right? But does it have, the cool little padlock on it that locks up real tight? Does it have the, the interior portion of it that kind of organizes everything, right? One's, better than the other, but there's a lot more thought process that went into this one than went into this one. That's why this one's cheaper, and that's why this one's more expensive. Yeah. Because more time and effort went into this one than this one.
Yeah.
Yes.
It's with anything, right?
So true.
Anything in life. And there's a lot of, I see a lot of Scotty's car washes in a lot of different businesses. There's a lot of the same problems manifest. They're almost all the same, man. At least the scaffolding's there. I see it in CrossFit.
Yeah.
I see it. I see the business side of it and how that cross pollinates to Scotty's car wash. I've recognized those patterns, but to your point, it's kind of like when you played that song the other day and you're like, oh, I wrote this in 2020, and I was like, oh, damn, but to get to that point with a car wash, you don't go out and you just like, I'm going to build a car wash and you just build one. It's like, no, there was, 2 years almost up front, year and a half up front of just doing your due diligence.
Just the research.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Just, where do you even start?
Yeah. You were telling me about the trade show for car washes.
Mm-hmm.
What's that called?
Yeah. So there's a Las Vegas convention, right?
Yeah.
And then there's a car wash convention that happens here,
I'm sure you had some clients.
No, because they build their own car washes. So it's not huge for our industry. They build their own car washes, but Simonize was one of our clients in the past. So
yeah, I found it so interesting that, I was like, oh, cool. So the building, Scotty's is opening, this year. So you went this year. You're like, No, I've gone the last 4 years.
Yeah.
You know, and I thought that was pretty mind blowing to me of like, wow, like the process of building up, you know, the business isn't even open yet. And you've been going and doing your research for the last 4 years.
Oh yeah.
You know, I thought
Yeah.
that was crazy.
Yeah, I'd go there. Yep. Yeah, that's a good point, Ron. I went to those car wash conventions, like almost like 4 years in a row prior to, or it was 3 years in a row prior to even opening Scotty's. You know, we not even had a car wash. Now I remember going there, and the guy was asking me, "Do you have a car wash?" And I was like, "Oh no," you know, thinking about building one, you know, but I'm here to pick their brains and learn, you know, because in those conventions, you go there, they're going to have the best products out. And it gives you an idea of like, okay, here's a POS system, and here's a blower, and here's a gantry unit, and here's the vacuums, and here's other vacuums, and it's all their best stuff, but you get to go there and you get to talk to them. And each year I went, I felt like I was asking better and better questions, you know, and especially I remember going there I'll give you a story. I was going there for my POS system, and I knew doing the year and a half of research, I was like, man, I want this to be cashless.
Yeah.
You know, I don't want someone there putting.
For those that don't know too, by the way, POS is point of sale.
Yeah.
So point of sale system, cash register, where you're making the sale, where they're typing in, collecting, blah, blah, blah.
That's right. That's right. And so I went there, and for 2 years, I would go there and I was looking at POSs, you know, and I was like, well, what's the best one? And then luckily I have a really, really, a smart analyst at where I work, and that dude means the world to me, man. And
Gio.
Gio, yeah, very special human being, man, and brilliant. And but he was with me in that journey, and we both wanted a cashless POS system, and for reasons based on the 2 years of research, which is I don't want to have an attendant there. You know, I give you $20 and you hand me back, you know, $4. Or I want to have to go out there and grab the bin from the POS every day and dump that at some bank somewhere, you know? And I just wanted to have
it get stolen.
You know, people come there and hit with a baseball bat and try to steal it and all that kind of stuff. So we had thought through all of that, almost like on every aspect of that car wash, that same thought on that POS was almost in everything in our car wash.
Over that 2 year period, right? It's going on for 2 years. How often did you guys have a conversation about what the car wash was going to be?
Oh man.
Was that on a weekly basis?
Yeah.
2 days a week?
It was on it's because you have a lot of projects going on. And John, you're probably very aware of this.
You got to carve out that time, right?
Very astute question. Yeah. And those conversations will have sometimes at lunch. They'll happen in passing down the hallway. But the real substance of those conversations will happen in the conference room. It will carve out a time where, hey, let's go talk about the car wash for an hour. You know, we'll 45 minutes we'll spend just, you know, where are we at now? What are the things that you didn't do that you need to be doing? What are the things that need to happen that you don't know how to do? And let's figure it out. Right. So I would say about once or twice a week, we would do that, you know? Okay. And I remember walking to one of the conventions and looking at him, and to Gio's, give him all the credit he deserves. You know, he looked at it and said, and he knew this, and it's just one thing I didn't think through, which I feel I should have, but that's why you have smart people around you, you know? And he said, you know, if this thing breaks, what do we do? And the POS is the most important part of that business, where the transactions occur. Yeah. If it goes down. If it goes down, what are you going to do? And if you want it to be as automated as possible, that's something you got to look into. And so him asking that question, we started now would change the way in which we're looking, how we go out and search for POSs. Who are we able to call and they'll answer the phone?
Right. Most reliable operating system, most reliable customer service in case something does go down. How do you get it back up? Yeah.
That's right. And there's some insight there into even, you know, all businesses is to, you think one thing about what you want to have, and then you ask a really good question, and it changes the perspective, and it changes your trajectory of what you need to have. And that's what we need to have for our operation is a POS that works well, but more importantly, if it goes down, I can call someone to get on the phone and they'll fix it. And so that's the reviews we went after, and we use Hamilton for our POSs, and it's been one of the most important and I think most important buys that we made. Yeah, and they're expensive, $80,000 units. Wow. And but
does that come with all the hardware too? Or
it does. Okay, it does. Comes with all the hardware, and
Is there a monthly service fee for all of that too?
Oh, because it's going to be some of that stuff's going to be housed in some server somewhere, so you gotta pay for that, the cloud fee or whatever. But then you also pay for them to, and they'll develop an app for you and all that kind of stuff.
Okay.
But the important part is just, hey, it's going down, or it's not reading right, or something's happening, and they answer, and you get that thing right away. So that was important. That was an important part of the journey of the car wash.
Well, you guys, Scotty's is top notch. It's like one of the nicest, if not the nicest car wash in Las Vegas. Alex, can we pull up Scotty's Instagram page? Can you kind of give us the elevator pitch on, what makes Scotty's different here in Las Vegas?
Oh yeah, absolutely.
So we've got it right up here.
There you go. That's our Instagram page there. And ballers we got going.
Nice.
You got to start somewhere, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
That's good.
Yeah. Proud of every unit, man. Let's go.
And so
that's 181 car washes a month. Right there. That's what I call
there you go, Joe. So that's a great question, Ryan. And that's something that we've talked about a lot. And I think kind of what separates our car wash from most car washes, and I'm going to say, when I say most, modern day express car washes, these are the Wows of the world, the Loves and the Tommies, is that we're 24 hours, right? I always say we're a hybrid between a gas station car wash and an express car wash, and not in the wash quality, because our wash quality is top notch. We spend a lot of time investment up front to making sure that the actual wash, what you do washing cars, is that part of the business is the best it can be. Yeah. We spend a lot of time in that. But what separates?
I'll vouch for that.
Thanks, John.
I've taken it in there.
Yeah,
yeah, and it cleaned it like brand new and touchless.
Yeah. So. What we did is we're 24 hours, but there's a whole lot of going into like the POS. Well, if you're 24 hours, how do you look at your POS systems now? So, but we're 24 hours. That's one aspect that we're different. And another one is we have a touchless option on our car wash. And so you can go to any C-store, all the gas stations like Chevron and Terrible's, and you'll notice a couple years ago, you'll go there and there'll be an attendant, maybe two out front. And a C-store is a convenience store car wash with a car wash attached to the store. Yep. And there was pulley systems in there, and they had to get someone to get you on the tracks, and they guide you in, and then you'd pull out the end. It was a shorter building. It would fit about one car at a time, and then there'd be a guy in there, and he'd with a towel, and he'd hand wash it and dry it for you. I don't know if you guys, you may still find a few, but a few years ago that was all over. And
that's like Freddie's car wash would do that, right?
Yeah.
Like wipe it down after you pulled the car out.
That's right. And you'd hand them like $5, tip them or something like that out of the window. And they did away with that. A lot of them have now. And they put this a gantry unit in there that's completely touchless, but it doesn't have any other things that you would expect from a modern day car wash, right? Which is tire shine and graphenes you could put on, and the waxes and the rain bar, the spotless thing, and that they don't have any of that kind of stuff, which is all the bells and whistles on it. And so they just did it out of like, let me just eliminate the labor cost. Let me get my chemicals down to the least expensive amount. And then this will be an add-on to already getting gasoline and snacks at the convenience store, right? And so what we did is we have an ability to have a full-on touchless option, meaning I have these, and we're the first ever car wash to have this in Las Vegas, which is the oscillating turbo nozzles. And these are very high power water jets that come out and they oscillate. So if you ever wash your car and you just took the hose and you squirted it on a piece of dirt in your car, you could probably get it off. But if you move your hand, if you move it back and forth, that's a real effective way of getting dirt and material off your vehicle. And so they oscillate at a very high rate of speed, along with, they a very high PSI, they're shooting out the water out, and so we have a whole bunch of these built into our gantry unit. And then on top of that, we've had, I don't want to get too much nerdy about car washing, but car washing is basically chemicals that are hydrophilic kind of stuff, right?
Explain what that means.
So when you run into your first part, you have a high pH at the beginning stages, right? The high pH.
The pH balance of the water, right?
Yeah, of the water, right? And so that's the very first part of a pre-soak of a car wash. And so you want to get as much of that high pH on your vehicle prior to the washing, because that's going to sit. And car wash is all about is about I'll call it cook time. Like it's about how much of that chemicals can sit on that car before you wash it off. Because the longer you let those chemicals sit on the car, the longer they have the ability to do their chemistry, to get rid of the dirt and grime that's on your car.
Mhm.
And so what is interesting about our car wash is since it's not a conveyor belt or a pulley system, that is, you're constantly getting pulled through. So the cook time is a lot less because you're already on to the next sequence of washing going through. And the model there, and it's a very successful model that Express car washes have done, is let me build long tunnels where I can stick 5 cars in the tunnel. And that's their volume. And I'll wash 1,200 cars a day, 1,500 cars a day. A lot is the WOW in Silverado, Maryland. That is the most busiest car wash in Las Vegas. Washes incredible amount of cars.
Yeah, it does.
So we took the cleaning part. A lot of it is like, I'll make an analogy to car washing. It's like if you're working out, right? They always say that abs are made in the kitchen, right? The chemistry is the food part. Very important component to losing weight is what's your diet like. Yeah. And the gym is the actual brushes and washing of the car, right? So if your chemistry is right, it's a very important part, then it makes the washing of the vehicle so much easier to wash it. Whether you use a touchless option or use the brushes, they call it friction, right? Friction is always going to be good because you have these like soft touch bristles that are hitting your car to get it off. But the cook time, the way that your chemistry is, how long it can sit on your car, is really important. So when you drive through our car wash, you get the high pH, which that's what you want to sit on your car and let it do its chemistry thing. And then you pull over and you get to the position where you stop. And it's in that 10 seconds, 15 seconds of extra time it's sitting on the car is really good for cleaning because it's allowed the chemistry to rip up, pieces on a molecular level of the dirt off your car. And then the car wash starts. And then now it's washing. And so now you have your oscillating turbo nozzles. Touch-free, getting a good touch-free wash is difficult because they can't be done in a modern day car wash like that because it's all brushes. You can't stop the brushes from turning on, but ours you can. And so now you have the good cook time in there with the high pHs. And now the wash turns on, you're washing your car. And then that gets done and you go through the arches, which is going to give you your graphenes if you choose it, the waxes if you choose it. And then once you get down, you hit the rain bar, which is spotless free rinse. Yeah. And then you hit the tire shine at the end and the blowers, and then your car comes out clean.
We're talking about a 4-star Michelin car wash.
Yeah. I could go on and on about car washes, but that's really the art of car wash, the art and the science, Well, I'll say the science of it. The art is a little bit different, but the science of it is the chemistry for sure.
Well, let's get into the business of it. So you have somebody that's there. Does somebody have to be there all the time? Talk to me about, how all of that works with employees and, because you've got a system of chemicals that are in there. You took me into the closet of that place, and there's, these 55-gallon drums of chemicals and stuff. And how often does that have to be replaced? And I know it's based on how many car washes, of course, but, talk to me about the business aspect of it, the money of it, and how that all works.
I'll start off with a wouldn't call it a failure on my part, but it was maybe a miscalculation is the better way to say it. When I started this car wash, I wanted to be as automated as possible because I wanted to the folks that were going to work there to only work on the internals of the car. Like they're my building engineers. They, you're going to be always messing with the chemistry and you're going to always be replacing a motor or greasing the thing. And that's going to be what you're going to be doing, The customer service part, I was like, is that an important component, And what I learned through that is if you have the right person in place, that it elevates the experience of the car wash.
Oh, yeah.
I have these wonderful lights I put in, these LED lights that are very expensive I put in there. But those lights couldn't do justice to a human being there who is fantastic at customer service. Like it doesn't, I can have all the lights, the cool features in there but rolling the window down and talking to somebody that's good at that part of the business was a real learning experience for me, a misjudgment on my part. But I appreciate Jim giving you a shout out. I appreciate that part of it because I see it. I see it every day. Hey, is Jim here? You just see that the people wanting to, they know Jim and Jim knows them. And it's a real important aspect of it there was a miscalculation on my part, but
Yeah, just the relationship and the interaction and knowing that somebody's there in case my car fails inside this place. I know I can get a hold of Jim real quick and he'll take care of whatever I need.
That's exactly right.
I will say though, with the lights that you put the investment in, that worked too, because our guest just on our last episode, Derek Duncan, it's like, hey, our boy's got a car wash, and he goes, a car wash over on Eastgate. He goes, oh, the one with the lights. And it's like, yes, the one with the lights,
Yeah.
So that's a great touch too.
Yeah.
It sounds like you guys covering all the bases for a successful venture here.
We try to, and I think you try to do that in any business or any project you're starting. But for the business component, to get what you're saying, John, a little bit has to do with the type of car wash you're running. So, we'd have minimal labor expenses because we don't have a lot of employees at my car wash, and it was designed that way. But the other component is that, it's the cost of like the commercial real estate cost of it. Is, you got to buy the land, right? Then you got to do the civils on it, and you got to get your permits on it and the grading and all that. All of
that stuff takes about 8 to 12 months.
8 to 12 months on a good year.
Okay, right.
If it's we call that the horizontals, right? Which is like all the stuff that's kind of under the ground, the horizontal work. You're not going vertical yet. Right. All the horizontal work on it. And that takes about a year. Yeah, you're right. Okay. And then from there, depending on what you're building, call it another year to get it built. Maybe it's 6 months, or maybe it's 8 months or something, but that's the vertical putting the building in together, And so those are all costs. Those are all, stuff you build a model for, and you budget all that kind of stuff out. And so then you try to keep all those costs low, and then you're calculating, well, man, how many cars are going to come through the car wash? And there's like, well, man, I hope somebody comes, but you're running these, and you're getting all sorts of, like, you're talking to, other people who are in the car wash field, and they're saying, oh, it's about, on this traffic count of a road is about 5% of people will stop by your car wash. So you plug 5% in there, and then you're building your model, and you're like, well, man, you got it modeled, and you're like, wait a minute, I got this thing modeled for 365 days a year. It does rain, so you got to back those days out,
right?
And say,
how
okay,
many days does it rain in Vegas?
Yeah, so then I'm all of a sudden looking at the NOAA data on, like atmospheric.
How many
data.
days is it cloudy? Because people are like, I didn't wash my car today. It might rain.
Yeah. That's right. And so then you're building these models, and you're backing out. Now you're running it on, 325 days a year or 315 days a year, and you're giving yourself a big buffer, and you're trying to get all the costs down as much as you can. So you did the analytics on how much traffic is driving by this place every day, right? Yeah.
You're taking that number and saying 5% of that number of traffic that's passing by a day is likely to use your car wash.
That's correct.
Right. And then say, okay, and now we're going to say, all right, it's not 365 days a year, it's 325 days a year. And what's the worst case scenario? What if it was 280 days a year, right?
Yep. You're trying to figure out what, and essentially what you're trying to figure out is how long till I break even. Right? How long till I'm gonna start a business, and how long is it gonna take me till I can cover debt service? I can, because you got to cover debt. You got the bank there,
right?
And I've got
because you want to loan money against that property to do the next one, right?
That's right. That those are ways. There's different ways to skin a cat, but definitely that's one of the ways to do it. And and I've got a relationship with all of our bankers, including the one that is done Scotty's, and he's a great guy and everything, and he'll call me as good astute bankers will call you every month and say, how's it going? And so, but all that,
anything else I can loan you?
yeah. And how's this loan going I gave you?
Right, exactly. So, you're making a payment, you're keeping up on that one.
We're doing good, right? Because I've got to meet with my board every 3 months, and I got to make sure that my loans are good, so you understand how all that works. And so, but yeah, that's essentially what you're doing. And those are the unknowns, you capture all the variables you can, all the knowns and unknowns. And in a budget, as you know, John, you have an interesting line there called a contingency, and it's the in case shit. It's the spare tire in the back of your car that if your tire blows out, you got one to put on to get you to the next stop, And so you pack money in your contingency, and you're doing all the modeling you can, but then there's the real world. The tires have to meet the road at some point, and that's we've never. Operationally, running a business, was definitely new for us, right? We haven't done it before, but we spent a tremendous amount of time up front doing the due diligence part of it. And now that you build your models 10 different ways, and you have 3 or 4 different sensitivity levels on it, and like you were saying, John, if what if this many cars come or this many cars come? And you just want to make sure that at the most conservative level of that car wash, it can still work.
Yeah.
You know, it can still work. And that's what you go to war with is that. And that's what you gear up and you go out and you execute.
That's the business plan. That's the game plan, right? That's the let's go, let's hit it. My question for you is when you went to Greg and said, hey man, let's do a car wash. What's Greg thinking?
I tell you what, John, it was that to that sentiment. It was right, but it was kind of the way that really occurred is Greg came to me and said, let's do a car wash and you're in charge. Okay. And then he walks out and I'm like, hey, wait a minute. This is going to be on me.
Yeah, funny.
All right. That's great.
And I think I was there. I say that tongue in cheek and it's a little banter going back and forth here, but a lot of that is true. And, I think Greg trusted me enough to not fuck this up. And he knew that I would do everything I could to make sure that this was going to be a successful, or I'd go down fighting. I would not walk away. And that's
all you can ask for in business, by the way, is you're willing to go down fighting with the ship. Right. And I've had failed businesses. I've had successful businesses, but in every instance of both success and failure, I put everything I had into it. Yeah. Everything I got, and that's all that it takes. That's all you can ask for.
That's all you can ask for, man. Right. And, and I think at the end of the day, that's, in our line of work, that's, when you have, when you're borrowing money from not only banks, but people and stuff like that, I got to a place where I actually was comfortable enough in doing what I do to borrow money from some of my close friends to put money in a deal. Not only to hey, I can put you in a deal and help you out, but they're my close friends. And it's a big responsibility because they're willing to trust you to give you money to do it, and what's
the ROI on that, and when does it happen? How does all that work?
Yeah, for the car wash, it's part of it. Part of that is I'll tell you how car wash is the secret sauce of most car washes.
Sure.
And there's still more secret sauce to uncover, but for the most part in 2025, what'll happen is you build a car wash, a modern day express car wash, and you have your land and you have the operations built on top of it, meaning you're building and all the stuff that makes you money. And at some point, that land and the money you borrow from a bank, you're writing a check to a bank every month for the lending portion of it. And then you go back to your model and you say, if I ground lease this if I create a ground lease for myself and I separate my dirt, which is the real estate, from my operations, and I can pay maybe a little more than what I'm paying now, or maybe you want to do it a little less, but you get to some number at the end of the year, maybe that number's $300,000 you end up paying, then you can say, I can take this and I can write myself a lease on it for 10 years with, 3 more years of renewals on top of that. And I can go package that up and I can go sell that to somebody.
Right.
And you can do that based on, in commercial real estate, we call them cap rates.
I was going to say that's commercial 101, investment 101 right there.
Yes, sir. And so, turns out that's what a lot of the wild guys have done. And turns out that they're in commercial real estate. Yeah. So makes all the sense in the world. And they've been very successful. One, they're the first guys to really, start to do it. There's other Loves and Tommies here, but they've saturated the market beautifully,
Isn't that one thing about McDonald's also?
Yeah, man.
It's they're not just selling hamburgers, but they're like one of the biggest owners of commercial real estate in the country.
The Founder's a great movie to watch for folks to watch. It's a very interesting movie. And I just watched it a few months ago and I didn't know about it.
Movie.
I knew about a little about McDonald's. Greg had told me that over the years, but he also told me to watch this movie, which I finally did. And, but yeah,
Michael Keaton's great.
That's right. Yeah. It's the same concept, man. They learned real quick that, you can make money selling hamburgers, but you can really, and it's a good tax position to be in and too. And that you can let me just buy and own the dirt and then have the franchisee just.
Well, that becomes kind of the operation and the assets happening at the same time, right?
That's right. And so, you sell, then you package that ground lease up and you sell it You can sell it for millions of dollars and you can pay back your, hopefully you can pay back your loan back. You can pay back your investors back their money. And at that point you can be in a scenario where you're just, you're splitting profits with your investors and you can be in the green. You can replicate that many, many times. And that's what WOW has done to go to their next properties. They, not to speak too much about WOW, but in the the zeitgeist of the conversation about car washing, they're the elephant in the room, so
Yeah.
Right.
I want to pay my homage to them, right?
Of course. Yep.
But also like, they just built a car wash on St. Rose,
Mhm.
and it's an expensive piece of dirt, but they're in a different part of their portfolio.
Yeah.
Right.
They didn't start off with the one on St. Rose. They started off how we started off, and they got to that point. And but that's kind of modern day car washing. And I'll tell you something else, man. I was one of the things I noticed is when I was going to these car wash conventions, I first started going there and I'd walk in there and I would see all these guys in jorts, and like
Mhm.
their little khakis, and there's a bunch of guys in there walking around, and you could tell that, and I'm a little tongue in cheek here, but you could tell that they started a car wash somewhere in the Midwest or something, and it was successful, because car wash industry is a very young industry, man, very young, and they're making some money, and it's there's still an element of the car wash business that you can film the football a lot and still kind of come out ahead, okay.
Uh-huh.
But if you want to start a coffee company, you can imagine how many times you're allowed to fumble the football. If you're dealing with before it's over,
Right.
you're dealing with monsters in that industry,
Yeah.
And but then what I noticed is, about year 3, last year I went there, I started seeing the suits there, which is I'll say the banks
Yeah.
in the back on a
Mhm.
table, and they're there.
That's when you knew
That's
this is a smart investment.
That's right,
Because
John.
they wouldn't be here.
100%. And I was like,
Yeah.
oh, this is interesting. I never seen the suits here
Yeah.
yet. So now they're in the back and they're like, all the guys who are Midwest, they got one and they have aspirations to open 100,
Mhm.
Oh yeah.
because they think that, it's all.
I saw the same exact thing happen in the CBD industry, right? You should just be a bunch of long-haired stoners that were walking around the trade show conventions for MJ BizCon and whatnot. And all of a sudden, a couple of years ago, you just see all the suit and tie gents walking around and you're like, yeah, this is a business.
That's right. That's right. It was cool
Business.
catching it early like that. I
Yeah.
caught a lot of things early in the car wash. One was the automation part. Like I literally watched live because I would go to that car wash a lot because I did a lot of, I was so dedicated that I would get up Saturday mornings and just go to car washes and sit in their parking lot and count cars
Mhm.
and watch that operation happen. That's how. And then
Nice.
I'd call Greg at
That's
like
a good
7.
way to analyze
Dude,
it. I didn't even think of that.
Yeah,
That's good.
I would
though.
call Greg at like
Yeah.
7:30 in the morning and just, wake him up like, hey, there's this many, I would just do all that kind of stuff.
That's
And, I
awesome,
would go to
man.
car washes and I would take $20 out of my wallet and I'll pay the kid at, I'm not gonna say which car wash I went to, but I'll pay the kid there to look at his iPad data.
Uh-huh.
Like, you're going to tell
Yeah.
me how much this is. And I know that I've been told this, many, many times from this area of town that this
Mhm.
is how many cars are going through. But now I'm at to the point where I want to can I see it?
How many
He's
are
like-
converging?
And I remember doing that a few times. I'd pay the kid $20 and he like, okay, pull around the side. And so I'd pull around the side.
Back door. And
He would walk over to his
slide this
iPad
out
and I would
the
look and
Yeah.
I would see the car count. And I'm like, okay, this jives. This jives.
Uh-huh.
This car wash at 90 a day jives with this area. And so I got a real good lay of the land by just going there in the morning and doing the nerdiest work. Because I was just so curious. I was just so, at the time, I just
passionate,
passionate, man. And I wanted
Yeah.
to succeed. And I just wanted to know if I didn't know if you about to build a car wash, I didn't know which car washes are the busiest. And, the part of it, I wouldn't know why, but at least I knew where they were and which ones were busy,
Mhm.
and you could start there. But that's some of the upfront work I did. And this car wash has been it's been a very interesting ride for me. I can do the development. That's not hard for me. Not that it's rocket science at all. Not because
Yeah.
I'm smart, because I have really smart people around me, but because I've been doing it so long. But the operations part has been, it's been fun, man. It's been, I go home, I go to work every day, and for 45 minutes, everything in the morning, I pull up the cameras, I pull out my spreadsheets I've built and still calibrating and making it super precise every single day.
Yeah.
And I'm
Because
watching
once
it.
it's a year in, you're going to be able to balance it with next year and say, oh,
Yeah.
I'm expecting to make this in January. I'm
Mhm.
expecting to make this in February. How can we actually boost those costs too? Do we raise rates just a little bit?
That's right.
Right?
Yep, 100%. And you can see, I'll look, I'm like, damn, we did really good last month, and we've been doing really well. I mean, we're growing at we're growing at almost 400 cars a month.
Nice.
We're growing at 15 cars a day.
Didn't you get your
That's great.
best day? Your best day
month over
yesterday?
month have been coming to our more, huh?
Your best day?
Yeah, my best day was yesterday, man.
Yeah,
No kidding.
Yeah, best day was yesterday by one car. which is awesome.
That's
yeah.
cool.
They beat the grand opening.
You know, which was
Nice.
which was cool. And I'll tell you something about car washing, man. I put a lot of effort in the grand opening, right? And a lot of marketing and spent some money doing it. And and then it paid off because you could say, well, that was your busiest day you had. And I was like, okay, great, busiest day I had. But car washing is very weather dependent. And I knew that going into a 3-day weekend with rain on Thursday all day of last week, if you guys remember, it rained. That this either Friday or Saturday is gonna kill it.
Yeah.
I just didn't know how much I was gonna kill it.
Just let it rain on the weekdays only. And Thursday is the best day.
Yeah. But yeah, man, now I got the bet, you know, and I remember when you first started, I was just like, I was counting, I was like, we got 36 cars today. Oh my gosh, you know?
Yeah.
And I knew you had a long way to go, right? So far. But you know, you just like, it's one of those things, it's like, how do you eat an elephant? You know, it's one bite at a time.
That's
you know,
right.
and that's just, and you can't look at you've got to understand the big picture, but you also got to understand how you get there, you know? And it's adding 400 cars every month. It's how you get there. It's all of that kind of stuff, you know, and just being patient is
How long do you guess before you meet your goal? Have you met your goal of what your expectation was for a daily amount of cars, or when do you expect to hit that?
Yeah, I say the first 2 months scared shitless, not gonna lie. Because it's just I didn't know how many cars, you know, is this a lease up period for a car wash? Does it take this long to get, you know, or is everyone just gonna show up one day? You know, you have no idea what's gonna happen. But I would say I feel like in about 6 months, maybe less, we're gonna be breaking even.
Okay,
where we need to be, and we're and baked in that 6 months. That also counts into my been open about 4 months, but for sure by this summer we're gonna be there. Yeah.
What about repeat customer data? Right, so month over month, how many percentages repeat?
Yeah, so we're about 80 on month over month. If you look at memberships, we doubled our memberships last month.
Fantastic.
So we've got quite that. Then that's real interesting because you had to build it out where you had to count your reoccurring members, and then you had to take into account how many of those reoccurring members stopped coming. So that's a number for that month. The new members that came, you add that, and that'll get you to how many members you're currently sitting at.
Okay.
And so that's and with those calculations, I know that I've doubled my memberships last month, and so that's been about.
That's great.
Yeah, that's that growth of getting that, you know, we're about an 80% growth on our members so far. Yeah,
That's awesome.
And it's a membership based. You can go in there, get a car wash, and just pay for it, or you can do a membership based car wash, and that you can wash cars many times as you want in a month, right?
Yeah, many times as you want. You come in there. We offered 4 different kinds of car washes. You know, your standard, your advanced, your supreme, and then our touch free. And our touch free has been one of our. It's funny because our touch free has been one of our biggest. That was our gamble too that we had, is that it's going to be one of our most successful car washes we have is a touch free, and it's interesting, a lot of Tesla folks, more Tesla guys who own those types of vehicles, come Cybertrucks and Teslas, that is a majority of our touch free customers, and then people with love custom cars, people who have wraps on their car and their vehicles like that. Yeah. Those are our, and I knew that, to your point, I knew that niche existed here. And I remember I'll tell you a quick story. This last week, I was at Chevron, filled up with gas, and I was at a C-store car wash, that Chevron there. And I looked and I saw this Porsche Taycan waiting to go in. I'm like, what is this? Why is he going to this? That's not, I don't want to say it's a crappy car.
It's got to be a lease.
Yeah, it's a convenient car wash, but I guess it's cheap, you know? And I'm like, wondering why he's going here. And then I was like, I started to think through it, and I got done with my gas. Like, I'm going to go talk to this guy. So I drove over there to him, and in my head, I'm like, I bet you he's coming here because it's Teslas. And he doesn't, I bet you, he has this Porsche Taycan. It's super nice. Yeah. And I got my car. I was like, a nice car. And he was like, oh, thank you. And I was like, hey, I was just curious. Are you here because of the touch free? And he's like, yep, I come to this one because it's touch free. So it means he can't go to the Wows. He can't go to the Loves. He can't go to your modern day car washes. And so I handed him my card and I said, hey, I've got a great touch free that is a lot better than this car wash. Sorry, Chevron, but it is. And you should come to mine. And he's like, you know what? My office is right down the street. I'll come check it out.
That's awesome.
And so there's a lot of those customers out there that want a touch-free option for their cars. You know?
Right.
Yeah.
So run me through a quick little scenario on the investment side of Scotty's. Let's say I got $50,000 and I want to invest with you. What do you say? Like, what's the deal? Like, run me through it real quick. You know what I'm saying? Maybe we got some listeners on here that are like, man, I want to invest. In
Yeah.
Come on, can you kick us a little bit of
That'll
that?
get you
info?
some free car washes.
Yeah.
Well, how that? You know, I'll tell you something, man. I can't give investment advice, of like this, but I'll say that we have a rule, in our company, which is no assholes, and for investors,
Must not be the music industry.
and is that it's really important to have investors that are busy with their lives, that are busy doing what they're doing, and they're being successful and they're making money at what they're doing. Because what you don't want is people calling every week asking how your investment's going, which is that's maybe for other investments, but that's not for us. That's not what we do. Right. We have a very we're very.
How do you know that though? You got to learn that the hard way a little bit.
And those lessons, I'll say, luckily I didn't have to learn. I was blessed coming in, like you said. I just saw the car wash opening. I didn't have to know. I didn't know there was like 2 years of stuff prior to this.
Yeah.
And that goes for where I'm now. I was blessed to not have to go through that part of the business. But I understand its importance. I really do. And and for me being able to go to some of my really close friends and ask them to put money in a deal is important. And I meet with them every week. Maybe I shouldn't say every week. Some of them I talk to almost every day, and some of them I talk to, every few weeks, and we go to dinner and we talk. And you know how it is in those meetings. You talk mostly about everything else under the sun, your kids and everything else. And you spend about 3 minutes talking about your business, and the rest of it is just, just fun. But for a car wash, it depends on how it's done. It all depends. And usually for investments and stuff, there's a pref on your money, and there's forgiveness the money, or thank you for doing that. And there's you split and a promote of an investment, right? There's where at the end, if there's the bucket still full after I've paid you back your pref first and I give you your original capital back, if there's a whole bunch of money left over in this bucket, we'll split that with the investors, and whatever. And typically that's your a typical deal, at least what I've been exposed to over my 8 years working. That's kind of how it pans out. It's some scenario like that,
How do you handle the pressure of having like tens of thousands or maybe millions on the line? What's your mental approach?
Luckily that came to me later on, and I didn't have to. I don't think I didn't have to have my own investors at the beginning to realize the importance of it, because I got to meet our investors. I got to meet folks, one-on-one. And when you get to meet, here's somebody I never met, like John, and then you're going to dinner with him, you're meeting him. It's like, there's an element there that's like, oh, this is a human being, and he has kids and a family and all that kind of stuff, And then that really hit home with me, that these are people who, help you hunt food.
Yeah.
And it's very important. And there's a rule that Greg told me one time. He said, really important. And one of the things he told me, he said, you treat every investor like it's your mom. I went to my mom and said, hey mom, I'm doing these wonderful things. And man, I know that you worked really hard your whole life, and just imagine going there and you want to help your parents and do that stuff. And you want to put them in a deal that, but you realize like that's a lot of their money. And if it goes, it's like, what happens if it doesn't work?
Yeah.
Right. And then you may be so passionate and maybe so gung ho about what you're doing. You can't lose sight of that part of it, because you don't want to, at the end of the day, everyone knows it's a risk, You don't want to stress your mom out. Yeah. You don't want to stress. Everyone knows it's a risk, and you want to do right, and you want to do right by everybody. But that's important, man. That's to be is what that feels like. Is that's the only way I can give a good analogy to it, is like, just imagine borrowing money from your mom, and that pressure, what that would feel like, knowing that you need to give it back to her, and hopefully you can give back to her more than she gave you.
Sure.
And so that's what it feels like.
Well, I could say too that, we were talking about this before the show started, and the risk tolerance, right?
Yeah.
And it's like the more homework that you do, and you did 2 years worth of homework on this particular project, right? The more homework you do, the less risk is involved, because the more parameters you understand and know, to where you're not afraid to go ask somebody for the money to work on this project, because you know what the end all be all is going to be.
That's right.
Yeah. God forbid something like the pandemic happen or something like that.
Course.
But, and a normal everyday thing. And we'll probably never see another one of those things in our lifetime again. But, understanding and knowing your every day, your 325 days out of the year, you're going to get cars inside of your car wash. You've already done all the homework.
Yeah.
Now it's just like, listen, whoever has the money and wants to, bring a 10% ROI. I don't know what the numbers are. If it's 8%, 7%, 10%, it's not hard to ask for it. Right?
No, it's not. It's not. Especially, it gets easier and easier, especially dealing with the quality of investors that you want to work with, and they like working with you. That's very important. But yeah, that's it's real. I mean, it's real. You're hunting for your food every day, and you get the excitement. And one thing the creative part of it I really like is you think that like, oh, I'm gonna get to this project. I'm gonna do all the work on it. I'm gonna spend 2 years developing it and selling it and all that kind of stuff. And you sell it and you make money on it, But the real but then it's over. Mm-hmm. And then you realize like, oh, that, and I'm not wealthy by any means, and I've been blessed in many ways with money that I don't think I would have ever had working for the city of North Las Vegas,
Mm-hmm.
but, but you realize like, man, the fun part of the job, the going to work every day fun part is like finding the deal and putting the structure together and putting it all together.
The art of the deal.
The art of the deal.
That is like the real, that what makes you get up in the morning and go to work.
Yeah.
It's not, you realize it's not like, you gotta win and you gotta sell it, but that is not, should be all the anticipation for. Like you realize like, oh, I can create this. Let me see the best way to structure this deal that works for everyone, Mm-hmm. And that is one of the things I think I really enjoy about doing what I do is that part. You get to be creative in that sense,
Yeah.
That is the best part. That's the best part of business for me too. It's finding success in something that possibly couldn't be successful, or that somebody else was working on that couldn't make it the way that it could be, right? Or that you could foresee it, changing it, just manipulating here and there and watching the successes, happen because of that. And creation too, taking something from nothing. In our business, we're taking something from nothing. It's a concept that was on a piece of paper, and then we're building it out in the back, right? And you get to realize it in real life. And then you see the client realize it in real life, and they're like, wow, I never thought it could be this cool. And you're like, this is great. And then because of our business and the way that the nature of our business, we get to keep doing that over and over and over and over again every month.
Yes.
So we always get on that high every month.
That's right. It is. It's like almost like a shot in the arm, and you go to seek that out, you try to, and you're kind of in ways you're looking at deals too. And you're looking at stuff and you get disappointed because, oh man, I know this deal's not going to work out because of, it could be, whatever issue is happening on there. And you're just like, you get disappointed because dang, I wanted to finish this project. I wanted to see it play out, but that's true. To your point, it's always not about the money, it is, and it's not, it is, and it isn't.
Well, the money comes. I always said, if you do your job and you do it well, the money will come. You don't even have to look at the money.
Yeah.
Right. I mean, we have to, of course, we have to structure a deal to make sure that the deal makes money. Right. Mm-hmm. But we don't have to worry about how much money am I going to make on this project? Yes. Oh yes. I can't wait. I'm doing this because the money, I just want money. Mm-hmm. I never do anything because of the money. Right. I do it because I'm passionate about the project. And if I put all my all into it, most of the time it's all going to work out.
That's right. And you don't have to take every dollar.
Right.
You don't have to take every single dollar. And because you want more of that part of it. That's what you want. And that's those are lessons I think I've learned too, is what I really enjoy about what matters really in life, right? Just getting up and driving to work, making that drive to work every morning, listening to your podcast, whatever it is you try to get there, to listen to your music and showing up and walking in the door and being happy you're there. You know,
I love that you bring up that word lessons. What's a piece of advice that you would give to a entrepreneur or, you know, first time business owner, like getting into, what lesson could you teach them?
I'll preface this from my experience, and this is coming from me, and everyone might be different for sure. But for me, knowing your blind spots and surrounding yourself with smarter people than you.
Mm-hmm.
I feel like if you can get good at those two things, you can be successful. And looking at everyone around you as resources and not competition has been very valuable to me, because everyone in your office or everyone at who you're around is a resource for you to lean on. And I think those lessons have really been something that I've learned over my years doing this, is getting good at knowing what you're not good at. And I still have those issues, you know, knowing your blind spots and then knowing that there's smarter people around you, and knowing when to lean on them and ask for stuff. And it's humbling, and it's you know, it's been humbling working there, because I'm a kid from UNLV, man. That's a commuter school. That is nothing prestigious about UNLV. You know what I mean? Well, I tell you what, there's some good damn people that go to that I've met that went to that school.
Yeah.
And I've got the privilege of I walk into that door every day, and everyone in that office is went to Rice, which is a extremely difficult school to get in. Extremely brilliant people, you know. I'm the dumbest person every time I walk in there, but I fucking love it, man.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Because I've ran into some. I hate to harp on this, and I do all the time because he deserves all the credit in the world. He's young as shit, but he's one of the smartest humans. He is the smartest human I've ever came across, and he's like I feel like he's my little brother, you know. Even though I know his sister, and he has 4 sisters, but I look at him as my little brother, man. I'll tell you a story about Gio real quick, and this is a little bit off topic. I don't want to go on too much of a tangent.
No.
Oh, good. Yeah.
But we're hosting a broker event one time, and we had a hockey game at the Golden Knights, and it was 20. I want to, man, shoot. Sorry, Gio, if I can't remember the exact time, buddy. But I was sitting with Mike Sue, who's a good friend of mine, who's a broker in town and been here a long time. And I met him through CrossFit. Obviously, all roads lead to CrossFit, right? So I was sitting with Mike Sue, and I was talking to him, and I knew Cassie, that's his wife, very well. They would CrossFit him for years. And I didn't even know that Cassie had a little brother, you know? And so I'm talking to Mike, and he tells me, he's like, yeah, Cassie, brother Gio. And I was like, really? No, she had a brother. He's like, yeah, he goes to Rice. And I'm like, in Texas? Like Rice University? He's like, yeah. And I'm like, hey, Mike, follow me when we get done. I want to talk to Greg, you know? So we walk up the stairs and things over. I was like, hey, Greg, Cassie has a brother, Gio. And he goes, oh, okay, that's cool. And he's like, yeah. I was like, yeah, he goes to Rice right now. And he's like, what? And so from that moment on, we dragged Gio in the office as an intern, and he was there for like almost 2 summers, maybe a little bit more, you know?
Mm-hmm.
And it's funny, I was in charge at the time of all the interns that run through our office, you know, and we get a handful of interns every year, and I'm in charge to, you know, it's one of those things too, when you want to give the intern a good experience, you know?
Mm-hmm.
But then it's also like, God, then you're looking at your plate, and it's like, what can I give him that's productive? And then it's like, and then you feel this turmoil because you're like, this is going to take time out of my day. I got to help this. But you know what? You look back and you're like, dude, what are you doing? Send the elevator back down, because somebody did that same shit for you.
Sounds, yeah. I can see Greg, Ben, Gio, you know, like this whole, you know.
Yeah. And so
recurring.
I kind of changed my perspective on some of the interns there. And I got Gio there, and never dealt with anyone from Rice before, you know. And I got the privilege of going to Rice with Greg, and I've never been to a
Ivy
League school in my life.
Yeah.
I've seen them, and I knew when I saw it, I was like, oh, all your hedges are trimmed all the same way. You know what I mean? I got it, you know? And, so I got Gio in there, and I started working with him for the summer, and like about a few weeks in, I'm like, this kid is a little bit different than the rest, you know? And I was like, wow. and it's humbling, and it's scary because it puts you in a position where you're like, damn, my RPMs rev to a certain level, you know, and intelligence is not everything based on the IQ aspect. You know, there's other parts of intelligence that work to your benefit. At least I try to tell myself that to make me feel better when you encounter these people. But yeah, man. And I worked with him. He was different. He was such a sweet kid, and he's grown so much working here. And and then Gio started working there. And he's full on started working there. Gio's been with us for years now. And he's awesome, man. And I always tell that story.
Do you think that you mentioned just a little bit of a tangent here. You mentioned that Gio is one of the smartest people that you know. Do you think that the school had a lot to do with that? Do you think that the Ivy League school, going to an Ivy League school, changes or makes somebody smarter than, say, going to UNLV? Or do you think that he was just a pretty smart guy already and got into Rice?
I'm smiling, John, because I've had these conversations with Gio a lot and other folks around this topic. And I always joke with Gio, man. I say, when did the suits come and tap you on the shoulder? You know, meaning, when did you come and enter your gate classes? When did somebody say, hey, you're not going to be in this class, the normal classes with the normies? You need to be over here in this in gate. You need to be over here in another. He's like, when I was in kindergarten.
Wow.
I was like, they came, tapped you on the shoulder and said, you're no longer here. You're going to be here. And so there is an element that you could say, well, I'll make it this. I'll make this quick. I'll make an analogy like this. Like, everyone should homeschool, right? And we all recognize, okay, that could be beneficial, right? Mm-hmm. But then we also would recognize, I'm sure we'd all agree that there's something to be said about going to high school and interacting in a social environment.
So important. Social abilities are extremely important, especially in business.
That's right. They're very important. So you can get a better education if you're homeschooled, and maybe you have like some environment set up where it's just you're so focused that nothing can deter you, from kids throwing pencils, or you can just be focused in that aspect, but you lose the ability of the social part of it, which is an important part of growing up.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And I make that analogy because I think that you're born with that gift.
Mm-hmm.
You're born with it. There's no way in hell that I could get my RPMs up to a Gio level, right?
Mm-hmm.
But Gio will tell you, I was out at school and I struggled because it was really hard. And I was like, damn, you struggled? And he's like, oh, I struggled. Not only did I struggle, there was people in there who I bet was way smarter than me that didn't struggle half as much as I did. And I was like, damn, so this is all the smart monkeys go to these schools, right?
Mm-hmm.
But they go to those schools because they set these hurdles there. Okay, you need to have this ACT score, this GPA. Let me see all the other intangibles that you've done, community service work and all this volunteering stuff. And then combine that and you can apply and get into these schools, But I think what those schools really do offer, and not there's me 100% speaking from someone that has not gone to those schools, just been around people that have, is networking.
Yeah.
You get a group.
You're in that higher tier level of networking, right?
Yeah. Higher tier level of networking,
Mm-hmm.
And I remember one time, an ex-girlfriend of mine I had told me, this is really interesting. She said that, you asked, she was a counselor trying to get kids to go to college, in high school. And she said that to me that a lot, and she was at, not really good high schools, that's where she was working. And she said that these kids would come in there and they'd want to be, their aspirations were, hey, I want to be, not these are bad jobs, not at all, but it's just the ambition part.
Mm-hmm.
And I think it speaks to this, which is, I want to be a dental hygienist. I want to be a paralegal, I want to be, because in those environments, maybe those people are down the street from you.
Yeah.
But who's not down the street from you? The CEO of a company, a lawyer,
The
a
dentist,
doctor, the dentist.
Yeah.
Well, see,
Right?
that's what I was going to say too, is that you mentioned like the paralegal, the dentist, the enter in the person under the person, right? I always just had the aspiration of wanting to be either the dentist or the doctor or the lawyer or not the person that helps those people.
Yeah.
And not that those aren't bad jobs. Derek, growing up, Derek, who we had on the other day, he always used to say, man, I just want to be a fireman. And I just want to live a normal life with 2.3 kids and, just come home for dinner every day and, sit down with my family. And I never had that aspiration.
Right, yeah.
Not to say that I didn't want a family and I didn't want to have kids. I wanted all that stuff, but I wanted more than just the normal.
That's right.
And I was always striving for more.
And I wonder, John, if that's something you're born with too.
Yeah.
I don't know if that is another part of that, the ambition and the wanting more and, uncovering every rock and turning every corner to see what is out there, what's over the next hill is something that curiosity is something you're born with. You have it. It's just inherently in your DNA and it will express itself in all forms of your life, and maybe that's something that you're born with as well, but I also, going there every day with a bunch of smart people and having the privilege of being around these really smart people and being able to go to these schools and hear stories about, let me tell you how smart this guy was. Let me tell you where this guy's working now, and all this kind of stuff. I went to Rice one time and I got introduced to this kid who was going there and a very, very brilliant kid, works at NASA, now, but, and maybe, and I don't want to speak of all of Rice, but some few of my interactions and I went to shake his hand, and I was like, hey, nice to meet you, and when I put my right hand out, he put the same hand out so I couldn't shake it. So I switched up and he gave me the same other hand and I couldn't shake it. And I was like, I got it. I understand. I understand what's happening.
Dap him.
Yep. Right. I was like, respect, man. So there's probably, there's gives and takes to, you can be brilliant and you can have a deficit in other things, parts of your life.
Right.
And that's okay too. But I at the same time, I get I feel honored and privileged to go to work every day and being around with groups of people that have ambition and have aspired to good things in their life. And to me, I couldn't ask for anything more than to go to work because it inspires you. It inspires you to not only want to keep achieving, but be consistent, And, there's some things like I need to be more consistent in my dieting and working out. That's something I need to get control over. And, you can make every excuse in the world.
It's balance.
But there's always something there. But at the end of the day,
we're going to bust some push-ups out, all of us after this.
Yeah, there you go.
I guess.
But at the end of the day, those pressures are there because they make you better.
Yeah.
They make you better, and when you're not feeling those pressures in life, you better really question where you're at. Because you don't want to be stagnant and all that kind of stuff, So I enjoy them. I try to embrace them as much as I can.
I find it so interesting. You start off, observing land and nature and doing all this work and then it just magically moved into commercial real estate. So you've been on the spectrum of land development, from walking by yourself in the sunrise, looking at snakes and tortoises and, the geography of the land to, $1 million deals and building up, the economy essentially. It's really interesting, man.
It's cool to come full circle like that.
It totally is full circle.
Yeah.
You're the landman, dude.
On the commercial real estate side of things, we were having some conversations with Carl, who was on here a couple months ago. And he had kind of thrown a tidbit that had me doing a lot of research over the last few months. And that was the fact that there's only about 8 years left of land space here for development. And I know that based on everything I've read now is that the government, the federal government, the local government are all fighting about how much land is going to be released, if there is going to be more land released.
Yeah.
I'm assuming that's having an effect on commercial real estate for you guys. And talk to me a little bit about how that is all like mapping out. And
that's very new, that what you're saying. And it's true. It's true. But it's also understood living here in Vegas. And I think it's understood living on the West Coast of the United States because, you get people who are from the East Coast or in the Midwest. It's hard. You're like, what is, you have all this land out here. Why can't you just build on it? And then you realize this is all BLM land,
Right.
And it's not a bad thing. It's your land too. I mean, you can go and hunt and camp on it. It's for everybody, but the federal government owns vast amounts of it on the West Coast of the United States, and It's not a thing back in Texas. You own your land and you own it,
Yeah, right. You walk from one person's land onto another person's land, right? I was talking to a guy, a Jeeper, and that's what he was saying. He was out in Pennsylvania. And it's like, you can't just go Jeeping anywhere in Pennsylvania like you can out here in Las Vegas.
Yeah.
You can go hit dirt trails all over the place because of all the BLM. When you are Jeeping in Pennsylvania, you're driving land from one person's land to somebody else's land, right?
Yeah.
And so there's specific areas that you're allowed to, and those areas are owned by people who lease that land out to allow Jeeps to be on it.
And that's right. And so more to your point about getting land released here, that's been a thing. It's always been a thing on the West Coast, is the BLM releasing vast, and they'll do it in large sections. They'll release, hundreds, maybe thousands of acres or something, But I know that our governor was up there asking for that to occur here in Vegas. But there's two ways to look at it. One is you can landlock yourself, and then which means that they'll drive up prices and your land will go up because there's no more land here. So when someone your land now, that if they know someone, you can, it's just supply and demand, right? You can see that no more land is going to be released, and you're the only 5 acres in town.
That's why California got so expensive. Not enough land. Right?
But they'll see it. I mean, I think all these things are in speaking, and I'm not speaking out of that I know everything, and I can only speak roughly at 30,000 feet of how I look at it, which is it's things like this are cyclic. They're market cycles, and the market is gonna move and its nature like it does, and I think that they'll release land. In my opinion, that's going to be something that's a big constraint that will occur, But when I think about land being released like that, it's not that land's released and that land automatically becomes extremely valuable. It has value to it, but I think of it as like, okay, now we got to drag water, power, sewer.
Right.
You got to do all the things, and how expensive is that component of it to get there, And so these are all the things that go into.
Well, especially the fact that we're, Las Vegas specifically doesn't have a lot of water.
Yeah.
Right. And now you can't even put grass in your front yard or your backyard and whatever.
Yeah.
You can't build pools bigger than the certain size. That was just passed like a year ago, I believe. So
that's true. And to Vegas's credit, I will say that we are the most efficient city in the country when it comes to water use. We're allocated, I believe it's 4%, maybe it's 3% of Lake Mead.
Okay.
And the rest goes to California,
Arizona,
right? Because it goes to
Utah, right?
That's right. Yeah. That's right, John. And of that, we don't use all of that 3-4% of water. We use a lot of it, but we bank like 1.5% rest of it. Because we know what we've done, and there's not a lot of places in the country like this that, you'll get a ticket if your sprinkler is spraying on the sidewalk. You'll see those trucks from the water district driving around, and they'll literally give you tickets. So we're very strict, and I think because we had to be strict because we're in a desert, we've engineered our way into being able to live here. And so kudos to human beings for doing that. Yeah. But some of that comes at a cost, and we've learned to be very efficient and have really strict standards, as John was saying, about getting grass pulled and smaller pools and all that kind of stuff. So
yeah.
But
not to mention an increase, last year I had to put some large palm trees in the backyard, which required a lot more water. And I get my bill and I'm like, doesn't seem right. $720 a month for water.
Jeez.
I'm like, what the hell is going on here? Come to realize, call the water district, blah, blah, blah. Talking to the lady on the phone there, who is the manager there. I got moved all the way up to the manager because other people couldn't answer my questions. And she's like, listen, every single home in Las Vegas, you get 930 gallons. After 930 gallons a month,
you move to another tier.
You move to the next tier.
Yeah.
And I'm like, well, but I'm on a half acre of land. Shouldn't I have more gallons? Than
my denominator should be,
right. I mean, it should be split up based on the amount of land. Are you telling me that a condominium gets 930 gallons and so do I? And the house that's on a 1/10 of an acre gets the same amount? And she said, yeah, that's what I'm telling you. And she said, sir, I'm telling you this. knowing that just so you know, I have a third of an acre of land and I go over my 930 every month as well. But
That's good customer service, John.
Exactly, right? She's all, but here's some ways that you can watch and demonstrate. And she told me, go out and read the meter. She's on the phone with me. I mean, she spent 45 minutes to an hour with me on the phone. She's all, read the meter. This is what the meter is saying. So tomorrow I want you to see what the number is tomorrow. And then I want you to go in and I want you to adjust your clock after you see this at the same time. I want you to go in and adjust your clock, and I want you to adjust it down to, 2 minutes less than everything was before. And then I want you to go out and read the meter again and then leave it like that, and she's like, showing me
wow.
You might not necessarily need as much water as you're watering right now, even though these, new palm trees and everything are new and blah, 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 and she got me down to a level. Now I'm still over, but I'm a lot less. Than
Did you get her number, dude?
Awesome, man.
Did you get her number? Maybe she come work for structure.
I wrote all that stuff down. Yeah.
No, get her to come work
tape
for you, man. That's
I know, right? Yeah, she was on top.
You need that
she was on
attention
top
to
of her
detail.
game.
Yeah.
Yeah, she was pretty awesome.
Oh, that's great. That's great, man.
So Ben, dude, it's been a major pleasure learning more about you and everything you're doing here. You're a very interesting individual and a very generous person, very, very fun person to be around. And I'm learning a lot. It's very cool to see how you have had great mentors in your life that have brought you in, and you've taken on the role to become a mentor to some part. We like to end some of our conversations with this question of if you could go back to your younger self and talk to him and give him one piece of advice or tell him something, well, what would it be?
It's a great question. Surround yourself with people that say good things about you in rooms you're not in. I think I tell myself that.
Nice.
Yeah.
That's a good one, man.
That is a good one.
Damn.
It's a real good one.
That's a mic drop right there. That's all.
That's
I got.
mic drop.
Yeah,
mic drop.
That's good.
Yeah.
That's good though, man. And that's what I noticed about all the people that you're around, man. They're good people, and you've opened the door for Life by Music and allowed me to come in and meet some. I mean, dude, we shook a billionaire's hand the other day. Still haven't watched this.
There you go.
You hoping it rubs off?
Yeah, man.
Yeah. Your credit score went up, didn't it?
Hey, dude, as soon as like, ding, 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 ding.
I got an 820.
It's like I got an email approved for the loan. I'm like, damn, Mario.
Yeah.
Oh, that's cool, man. Thank you so much for being on the podcast with us. You ain't done yet. You got more. I can only assume, man. We talked about the car wash. We talked about Scotty's and the path that it's on. But I mean, Odyssey's got a lot going on, and you've got a lot. We didn't talk about the role of family and brotherhood, and all the responsibilities that are there, and the aspiration. And
well, that's a good reason
there.
too to have him back on, right?
Yeah.
Because in 6 months we can have him back on. We'll see where the car wash is in 6 months, because that was the timeline that you gave, right? I know you're 3 or 4 months in now, but we'll see where it's at in 6 months from now, and then we can get into all the other good things about business, and that's the family and relationships and everything like that, right?
Yeah, because that's just as important, right?
Oh, without a doubt, if not more.
If
that's
not
the
more.
most.
Yeah.
That's
absolutely
important.
Well, I'd love to come back on, and I really appreciate you guys having me on. And I'm not the most intriguing and or insightful or important guest that you guys had, and nor do I ever look at myself that way too. So, but I'm humbled and honored that you guys let me on here. So I appreciate it.
Yeah, no, we appreciate having you, man. It was cool.
Yeah, man.
Good to learn on this stuff for sure.
Yeah. So like and subscribe again. The Ain't Done Yet podcast. What is this? Episode 22?
I think it's episode 22.
Let's go, man.
Let's
All right.
go. Yeah.
Thank you.
Peace.